Hello. I have recently started to pick up fasting and not intermittent fasting. I've been doing that for 2 years, but like day-long fasts and just on coconut water or tea or distilled water or a mix of the three. And I wanted to share what I've been learning, what I've been experiencing through this as spiritual, when it comes to spirituality. And so the number one thing that fasting has taught me, I'm going to be reading off my journal, but I'm also going to be, explaining more than just what I wrote, is that desire is suffering. The want to want is the root cause of all suffering. Because whenever you desire, what you're telling yourself at that moment is that I am incomplete, that I need this thing, that I want this thing, so then I can be happy. And what I've learned through meditation when this comes up is that if you can remove the mind, just make it go away, the desire will go away too. And when the desire goes away, all you're left with is peace. And peace is the foundation to happiness. And without peace, you can't be happy. You can have pseudo-happiness, which is what I call fake happiness. It's a sense pleasure. Take sugar, for instance. You can eat a candy bar and you'll be happy. You'll be happy for a little bit. And then you'll get on the come down, the sugar crash. Your stomach will hurt. Through fasting, I like to be around people sometimes. I like to be alone. And one of my favorite things to do is just watch the rise and fall, the shift in people's states of being as they consume food. And it is honestly really interesting. But what I learn is how much more stable and consistent my states of being is, and consistent my life is when I fast. And not only that, but my manifestations are much more pleasant, much more pleasurable, and much more intentional. But I digress. So when you drop that desire, this is kind of where the battle begins, especially in the beginning. And so your weapon in this battle is meditation. And so a little edgy little thing I wrote, looking back on it, is for those who can silence and control their mind, they are saved. And those who cannot are doomed to waves of endless desire and unsatisfaction. So what is the battle? The battle is to just be. If any of you have truly tried to sit down and just breathe and not fall to the urges of I need to go do this, I need to go do that, to not fall to any urges to move, to not do anything, you'll realize how hard it actually is. Just because we've been conditioned to think in certain ways. Primarily, that's where I find the hardest issue. The body issues are rough in the beginning, but if you're able, by body issues, I mean the urges to move. But over time, your tolerance for pain increases, and I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing, because you shouldn't always let the body be hurting. But if the legs go numb, it becomes a part of the meditation. It becomes almost like a sacrifice, a surrender that you're giving up to sustain this peace. And I know that might sound a little weird, but if you're someone who sat down, meditated, and you feel certain parts of the body go numb, it's just another part of that deep meditation. But anyway, the battle to just be, yes. To give up a desire is to disturb the narrative. In other words, to disrupt the ego, who you think you are and who you are trying to become. For being an actor, a millionaire, an entrepreneur, a farmer, a father, a mother, someone who's just trying to live humbly, it's not sustainable. And I'm not trying to kill dreams, because even I have dreams of, making money off the internet, making a living by being a teacher spiritually, a life coach, dream coach, by making money off, purely meditating. That'd be incredible. Still have a lot to learn. But it's not sustainable, because if I fail to reach this goal, I will suffer. If I reach this goal and then everything gets taken away that I perceive made me into that person, I will suffer. And even if I reach the goal itself, I will suffer. Because I will not stop. Desire does not stop. What happens is the end goal becomes a starting point. Because I'm sure if I started getting paid, to do my meditations, to teach people, then I would want to create a book. And then if I don't create a book, then I'm going to suffer internally. I'm going to beat myself up over it. And then if I create the books, then I'm sure I'm going to want to sell it. And then I'm going to make sure that my intentions are correct with it. And then I can just keep going and going. And it goes the same thing with billionaires. Clearly at one point they wanted to have $1,000, then 100,000, and then 1,000,000, and then 1,000,000,000, and clearly it was never enough. Their end goal became their starting point. And so this is the thing with desire, is it's quite literally just a cycle. Desire just breeds more desire. Acting out a desire tends to just plant more seeds for multiple more desires. It's like eating Oreos. Oreos has so many different types of cookies. You eat one and then suddenly you have planted the seeds to try all of them. Maybe just me. You'll only want, this is something I wrote. And I wrote, you only want because you think it'll make you happier. You only want because you think it'll make you happier. You only want because you think. You only want because you think. Right? So you only want because of the mind. Because the mind is what thinks. You do not think. Okay, you are awareness. And you realize this because the desire is going to make you suffer. And so what you're going to do through meditation is you're going to make the mind go away. And if you do this well enough, you'll lose sense of the body. And when you lose sense of the body and you lose sense of the mind, all you're left with is awareness. Look at me, I'm poking at you. Come on now, come on. Use that smart brain. And so then you come back here and you get caught up in the illusion again, but you've tasted it. You've tasted, in varying degrees, you taste it, the peace, the freedom, just being super duper grounded. And so that is, that's like the main point that I wanted to get across. There are some freestyle things I'm gonna write around, because that was almost like a little script just to get me going. But there are a few points I do want to freestyle on, is the purifying aspect of fasting. Again, when it comes to spiritually. Physically, yes, there are honestly quite a lot of benefits. You get really good control over the body. You're not so impulsive anymore because you are practicing abstaining from food. And this helps you get in social situations, and it helps you refrain from indulging on certain foods, certain substances that you wouldn't normally want. I recently went to a football game with my dad because I live in a college town, and his friends were, I love them. They were offering me beer, they were offering me caramel popcorn, they were offering all these things. And even my dad was offering to buy me food. And there was this, a vegetable wrap, which sounded really yummy. It had hummus, all the good things. But I was choosing to abstain from that because I understand if I consume these things, it is going to have an immediate effect on my physiology, which is going to have an immediate effect on my thinking. And if you're not incredibly good at controlling the mind, it will influence you to a degree. And so I chose to stay away from it. And that's a physical benefit. But the benefits that come with your, I guess spiritually, I don't know if I'd even call it spiritual, but it's the ability to just, I guess I would call it spiritual, is your presence. You become so present over a period of time. And I did myself a favor because I knew I wanted to get to this point, but I understood that I need to have better eating habits. So what I did is I trained myself to eat primarily fruits and vegetables, mainly fruits. And even now, I don't really chew my foods. I do chew maybe one item a day. Sometimes I'll go 24 hours without chewing anything. I'll just drink my food. It's like in the form of smoothies and juices too. I really like apple juice right now. But it's just so much easier on the body. And so the body doesn't have to go through so many ups and downs, and it can just stay level and it can really heal. But the spiritual benefit of being present is it's so much more information you can take in. And it's so much, there's so much less superimposing. When someone's anxious, you're still receiving the same amount of information as someone who's, deep into a fast. But when someone's anxious, there's so much more narrowing of the amount of information they can actually process. They're still receiving, they're just not processing it at the same rate as someone who's fasted, because their presence isn't grounded into the now. Their presence, their awareness is grounded in whatever is making them anxious, more than likely thought. And so they're living from a different area, and they're bringing that energy into their now moment and manifesting that for themselves. Someone who is present, who is grounded, sees what is actually occurring in their now moment and acts accordingly. Like right now, I'm the only one in my apartment. I'm the only one in my room. I understand that I pay for this room. I understand that, I'm just talking to a camera, and so I feel relatively calm. I'm acting out on something that makes me really happy, and so I'm really happy about that. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not even trying to create worry, because none of those things exist here. And I don't want them to exist here, so why would I put my focus on them and manifest them here? All right? And that's just one thing of it. Another thing is just your being. Like that's another thing. The only thing we can ever offer anyone is our being at that present moment. So someone who's anxious can only offer me anxiety, can only offer me worry. They want me to meet them there. But me who's present in the now moment, who feels the beauty of the moment, the abundance of the moment, the love of the moment, that's all I can give them. Reassurance. Again, abundance. Look at how good everything is around us. Look at all the opportunity we have. Look at all the good things coming our way. Look at, we're here. That's all I have to offer you. And through that, and you return the favor. Either or, you also reap the benefits of your being. And yesterday, I went hiking with one of my old roommates. And we were in the car, and she was driving. I was in the back seat, her partner was in the front, and I stuck my arm out the window, and I was just, doing the little thing that we do as kids, putting our hands out, and I was admiring my arm hairs and the way they hit the sun, and it dawned on me that I felt like I was on a psychedelic, and all I had in me was coconut water and some smoothie from the previous day, because I still had to poop it up. That's another thing. You become super aware of your body and what's in it, and so you don't just eat to please the tongue as often, at least in the stage where I'm at right now. I know in due time I won't be like that, but you start to feel like you're on drugs, which I think is actually the natural state of life. Because if you've ever done mushrooms, when you eat mushrooms, it's like the most cognitive drug ever. It literally just brings you back now to the moment. And it's like childlike consciousness. You're not worried about bills. You're not worried about people, future, just adult worries. Those worries that somehow creep up into your life that just destroy this childhood innocence. You return back to it. And it's beautiful. It's so healing, because it reminds you this is how it's supposed to be. This is possible, and you know it's possible because you lived it. And if you do the work, you can get there again. You really, really can. And you can make it normal for yourself. So that's something awesome. Another thing is it gives me a peek into the future of what my life's going to be like, which is honestly very, very relieving. And by that I mean, when I was becoming vegetarian, I was still eating cheese. I had stopped drinking milk at that point. But I would abstain from meat for like a week or two at a time. And I was pretty active, so I was really aware of my body and how my body felt and how it digested food, how long that took, and what would constipate me and what wouldn't. And so I would get peaks in those 2 weeks periods of time. I'm like, oh, so like this is what it's like to stay away from meat. And then I'd eat meat again, and I'd feel how dehydrating it was and how long it would take to get out, and how heavy it would make me feel and yucky, and the whole shindig. And so that's what happens anytime you change your lifestyle. If you start exercising a lot, and then you go back to being lazy, and then you exercise for a little bit, and you start being lazy, but you see that over time exercise is going to become a very permanent part of your life, You get peeks into what your life is going to be like, and then eventually that becomes your standard. Those little glimpses into the future are now your standard, but in that standard, that new standard of exercising every day, or in my case, fasting more often, I'm starting to get peaks of, oh, so this is how calm my body's going to be. And when I'm this calm, this is how I think. And this is what happens with my ability to read energy, and my ability to remember things, and my ability to speak clearly, and my ability to chant, and so many fun things. So that's something really cool. Intentions of fasting. Something that's really important is I'm not fasting to lose weight. I'm not fasting to, I guess that's really another thing. See, when you fast, don't just do it just to do it. Do it with purpose. If you have conviction, it's gonna be a lot easier to get through, but you can get so much more from it. So my intentions with fasting are to bring me closer to the source of everything. It's to bring me closer to truth. I want to live truthfully. And some might be like, well, how is abstaining from food and liquid going to do that? Well, I will acknowledge now, fasting has never made anyone enlightened, but it surely does help, because when I have to abstain from my crutches, then I'm left to process all this emotional, mental stuff. Because the thing is when you fast, what you're doing is you're forgoing the donuts, you're forgoing the cookies, you're forgoing the smoothies, the fruits, the rice, the beans that you eat when you're stressed. And so what happens when you do that is you process that really dense physical matter. It has all these ups and downs that last for more than a day, honestly. I fasted for a long time, and then I cooked a bunch of stir-fried rice for my boss, and let me tell you, it stays. It affects you into the next day. But regardless, you have to process that dense physical stuff before you can get onto the mental and emotional stuff. And so all it does is it just drowns it out for a period of time. But all you're doing is prolonging the suffering. It's not worth it. And so the beautiful thing about fasting is I've been told, and then I realized later, is that no one told you how much you can heal in a day. Shout out Taylor Budd, shout out Lao Tse. I'll leave his channel description below. That's something that's really, really important, is you need to fast with intent. So my fasting is for spiritual purposes. I want to get closer to the truth. And so I choose to abstain from everything other than my breath, coconut water, and some tea. Because I find that when I heal the body and treat it well, I eventually need less. As there has been, in particular, one moment where I woke up and I didn't want anything. And because of that, my whole life that I'm living now was basically going to be thrown to the trash unless I ate. I did talk about that, I think, in my very first mic talk. So I'll link that up there and in the description so you can get a little bit more of that, because I don't want to repeat myself. And returning to drugs, alcohol, and heavy eating after fasting. So I used to be a stoner for 2 years. Used almost every day in large amounts and in small amounts over the period of time. And after roughly like a month of this lifestyle of fasting, eating well, exercising, all that stuff, I went to a Halloween party with my old coworkers. And my old coworkers, they would party a lot. That's how they got together. That's how they socialized. And so it was kind of like a desire to see them one more time. And so I acted that out. And in there I did take 2 hits of a joint, and I took 3 shots over a period of time. And so returning to things, once you fasted from them, in my opinion, is pretty important, because it shows you, it reminds you what it does to you. And more the fact that since you've abstained from it for so long, it's going to hit harder. So it's like that, me transitioning into a vegetarian, I would eat meat. I was like, oh, so this is what meat does. Okay, now I really want to stay away from it. And then, so this is me returning back to weed. After those 2 hits, I remembered why I took it. It's an incredible relaxation that allows me to really listen in on people and grab both of their eyes with my eyes and just share my being with them. As I told you earlier, the only thing I can offer you is my being. And so that's what I'm choosing to cultivate more and more. And I find that more and more things come to me. And very good things come to me when I do this. But when I smoked and I got high, I was like, oh, like this is beautiful. And I was able to have such healing moments with people, because when people drink alcohol, especially those who don't have control over themselves, they'll just spew. They'll just let so much out. And so I processed a lot of stuff for people. I help people process things. But then I saw the bad side of it, because the next day I woke up and it was a lot harder to get out of bed, and it was a lot harder to exercise, and I didn't want to exercise. I just kind of wanted to eat and let the pain go away. Not the pain, but just like this lethargy go away, and I just didn't want to do anything for a day. I almost needed a recovery day. So it reminded me why I stay away from those things. Yeah, and then heavy eating too. Heavy eating is just as bad as smoking weed and alcohol. It stretches you out. It always puts you in a subtle irritation, a subtle annoyance, a subtle restlessness, subtle anxiety, because the intestines are not meant to be stretched out. The lungs are not meant to be pushed on all the time. That's another thing, is your breath isn't as deep. You shouldn't be, it's just, it does so many bad things to the body. It does so many bad things to the body. Your food should be hydrating. You are like 70% water. So your diet should be 70% liquid, 70% hydrating you. Plus the compensation game with heavy eating is ridiculous. You eat all this heavy, dense, oily, dry, dead, fried food, and then you got to drink all this water to compensate for all the dehydration the body goes through. And you go through so many ups and downs based on if it's a lot of sugar, if it's a lot of fat, if it's a lot of protein. A bunch of gas gets built up, so you get all stretched out and stressed out. You have to exercise a ton to get all the lymph or garbage out of your system. You have to run and massage the tummy so you can poop it all out, and then you got to eat in certain ways to get the poop out, in which, by the way, you go leafy greens, and then from leafy greens you go fruit, and then from fruit you go smoothies, and from smoothies you go juices, and juices you go water, and then you can go herbs and then water, distilled water. So you get all of that out, and it's just like, damn, it's so much, when really you could have just drank some coconut water, did some deep breaths, and you would have been just fine. Because all you were desiring, all the stuff that you wanted because you thought it would make you happier, didn't really make you happier. All it did was breed a bunch of desire that you then had to either throw away and go through the suffering process of giving up desire, or act it out more and then try and intentionally guide your desire to where it leads you back to where you started before. Remember, you always fall to temptation, you never rise to it. You only rise to the occasion of respecting yourself and not abandoning yourself. The degree of failure that someone can fail is only to the degree that they can abandon themselves. Think about that for a little bit. Okay. I love you guys. This is everything I've learned from fasting recently, and I appreciate y'all. See you soon.